I'm Nancy Buck, a member of the class of 1965, as I always say, the best class ever. And I am although with the reunions here for the 3s and the 8s and my colleagues here, probably you have your own views, but that's okay. I'm the chair of the Pembroke Center Associates Council, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this forum on a sense of humor, brown women in comedy. For those of you who don't know, this custom of forums was established at Brown at the time of the Vietnam War, when we were trying to figure out what to do about having commencement and reunions at a time when everybody wanted to talk about important issues or take over University Hall, whichever came first. And the idea of these forums was set up at that time to have discussions about what were then the most important issues, and over the years they've morphed into a wide variety of forums on all kinds of issues, including what is now the most important issue, which is comedy. The forum is sponsored by the Pembroke Center Associates, which is a group of alumni and friends who support the Pembroke Center for Teaching and Research on Women. And this forum is also co-sponsored by our friends at the Women's Leadership Council. Before we get started, I'm supposed to tell you to turn off and silence your cell phones and electronic devices and pagers and things like that. The Pembroke Center was founded in 1981 in the wake of the merger of Pembroke College and the College, and it was named in honor of Pembroke College and Brown University, the women of Pembroke, and its predecessor, the Women's College. And it was established, as the name suggests, teaching and research on women, to do what some people call, I guess, women's studies, but which we've never done that way. Our center has gone, this is very Brown-like, we've gone in a different or comparable direction of studying the cultural and social meanings of gender, of studying the constructions that give rise to how people think about gender. And that means, of course, questions like, are men really different from women? Why did that guy, Paul Tudor Jones, say that you couldn't be a trader? This is just this week. You can't be a focused trader if you started to nurse a baby. That's a cultural construction of the female of the kind that we do deal with. And we deal with issues like cultural constructions like, is it true that women don't have a sense of humor? Is it true that women can't be comedians? That is a cultural construction which we're going to explore today. The research programs bring together faculty, postdocs, students, visiting scholars to explore these questions not only of difference in gender, but also of differences critical to understanding other large questions, ethnicity, race, nationality, class, and the interplay among all those issues and gender. We have some students graduating tomorrow. We're very proud of them. The center supports 2 complementary archives, the Christine Dunlap Farnham Archive, which is an archive about focusing on Rhode Island and Brown Pembroke women, and the Feminist Theory Archive, which focuses, as you would expect, on the papers of feminist theorists. And if you'd like to become involved with our work, which I hope you will, if not after this talk, at least after theirs, we're a membership organization. It's pembrokecenter.org. We would love it. And now let me introduce this panel. Tara Schuster, which one's that? Tara's in the green jacket, is from the class of 2008. So she's having her 5th reunion. She received her A.B. in History and Literary Arts and studied playwriting under Bonnie Metzger and Paula Vogel while she was here. She works at Comedy Central, where she's the digital producer for the TV show Key and Peele and the web series Van de Vian and Mike. She also produced 2 seasons of the segment Obama's Anger Translator, which the president himself cited as his favorite Obama impression. She began at Comedy Central as an intern for The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And her plays include Heart Revolution, Be Brave Anna, and I Am Eloise. She writes a column, Life Advice Tester, for HelloGiggles.com, and has performed in the web and TV series Grown Up Words on Nick Mom, and in the YouTube series Ladies Who List. I'm going to go through all of them at the outset so that we don't have to pause in the dialogue. So welcome, Tara. Marin Hinkle, class of 1988, another reunion class. Received her AB from Brown in English and Theater Arts and an MFA from NYU's acting program. Her TV credits include playing Judith on 2.5 Men and Judy on Once and Again. You do have roles other than named Judy, right?
But if I audition for one that's named Judith, I always think I'll get the role.
Yeah, oh, okay, good. And she's also had roles in Deception, Brothers and Sisters, the Sarah Silverman program, and I love the way this is framed, all the Law and Order. Law and Orders. There may be a quiz later about who can name them all. Hinkle's Broadway credits include Elektra, 1,000 Clowns, and The Tempest, and she's worked off-Broadway at the Public, Lincoln Center 3, Primary Stages, New York Theater Workshop, Theater for a New Audience, Rattlestick, The Vineyard, and The New Group. And her films include My 11th, Friends with Money, What Just Happened, Turn the River, I Am Sam, Frequency, and Dark Blue. She's taught at Cal State Long Beach and the Atlantic Theater Company in Los Angeles. Suzanne Whang holds a master's degree in cognitive psychology from Brown and a BA in psychology from Yale. I'll pass on that. She's a television host, actor, stand-up comedian, author, public speaker, minister, radio host, and political activist. She's hosted HGTV's House Hunters for almost a decade, and as an actor, she's best known as Polly on NBC's Las Vegas. As a stand-up comedian, she won the Best Up-and-Coming Comedian Award at the Las Vegas Comedy Festival and the Andy Kaufman Award at the New York Comedy Festival. Her outrageous alter ego, Sung-Hee Park, has been featured on Comedy Central's Premium Blend, and she's the author of Suzanne Whang's Guide to Happy Home Buying and is working on a second book about her recovery from stage 4 breast cancer. And let me just say that we hope that you'll produce 3rd through 15th versions of that book on recovery every 5 years.
Thank you.
And welcome you back the next time as well, but welcome to Brown. And our moderator today is Lauren Corrao, class of 1983, another reunion class, and a Brown parent, class of 2016. Lauren graduated with an AB in semiotics and is a member of the Brown University Women's Leadership Council, our co-sponsors today. That must be how we got you.
That's right.
She's a veteran programmer and a consultant for Comcast Entertainment Studios, and until recently was president of a very good production, developing and producing TV for Warner Brothers with Ellen DeGeneres. Before that, she was president of original programming and head of development for Comedy Central, known for television series like The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and South Park. Did you know her when she was an intern?
No.
Lauren was also an executive producer at Touchstone Television and spent 4 years at Fox Broadcasting as vice president of comedy development and of alternative and late night development. She began her career at MTV, rising to the rank of vice president and executive producer, and developed the groundbreaking reality series The Real World, The Ben Stiller Show, and The Jon Stewart Show. So Lauren, it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Nancy and to the Pembroke Center for putting on these forums. It's always so great to see how many people come out. You forget when you're out in the real world how truly inquisitive and interested students from Brown are, and we welcome all of you. Thank you so much. And I am humbled to sit up here with this group of obvious underachievers. And I can't wait to hear their views on comedy, which is one of the most important things that's going on today, and especially women in comedy. You forget how rare it is to be a female in any industry these days, but as you will see throughout all of our discussions, women in comedy, we are still very much in the minority, and I'm happy that we were all able to be here and are all from Brown. So I'm going to set the tone a little bit, and then I'm really going to ask these guys questions because they are funny, way funnier than I am. But I did want to start by saying that part of my job every year at Fox in comedy development was to attend the Aspen Comedy Festival. And In 1998, the then 73-year-old Jerry Lewis made this controversial comment. "I don't like any female comedians," he said. Martin Short, who was moderating panels like this, then said, "Well, Lucille Ball, surely you must have liked her," to which Lewis replied, "No." He went on to say, "A woman doing comedy doesn't offend me, but it sets me back a bit. I think of her as a producing machine that brings babies into the world." On that note, Lewis completely lost his audience, which got up and left. There have been many articles and many people reacting to that quote. And one of my favorites actually happened just a couple weeks ago. Paul Feig, who was the director of Bridesmaids, which happened to be written by and starred all women, in a guest column he wrote for The Hollywood Reporter, simply stated, "Men just aren't funny. But they seem to be having such a great time that you'd feel like a monster alerting them to this one unfortunate fact." He goes on to say that nature has actually provided humankind with two biological safeguards. One, an intellectual anomaly that allows males to believe that they and their friends are indeed funny, and a survival instinct that impels women to laugh at men's jokes. So basically, as long as men feel good about themselves, no matter how delusionary those feelings might be, the tribe will continue to function. The producer of Bridesmaids, also a man, Judd Apatow, while accepting the Critics' Choice Award for Best Comedy Film, said about Jerry Lewis, "Jerry Lewis once said that he didn't think women were funny. I like to say with all due respect, and I quote, 'Fuck you.'" And Tina Fey, in her brilliantly insightful autobiography, Bossy Pants, said this about Jerry's statement, and I quote again, "We don't fucking care if you like it." So on that note, I'm going to turn this over to the panelists. Are women funny?
Before we start, I just have to tell you how cute Marin is. She's got like little note cards. What are you doing? It's just a conversation.
I just have to say that in response, when Martha kindly asked me to do this, I did call her right back, very nervous, sweating profusely, and said, "I will do this as long as it's like made clear that I am not funny." I've never been funny, and there's no pressure to be funny. But I did, as people were walking in that I love so much, I had this moment which was bringing me back to grad school. And I used to, the first couple of years I was there, we had to do a lot of improv, and I would take every character that was given to me and make her incredibly noble and incredibly ethical. And when I got my first kind of critique of my work after about 4 months, I had this great teacher, Paul Walker, he said, "You have to learn not to be so brown." And as you were all walking in, I had this moment where I was like, "Oh my God, I get to be really brown." So I can just be noble and not funny.
It's like, I'm like, "You're being so Asian." I'm getting an A.
I did a math test. So hopefully we won't be great.
One of my Facebook friends said, "Brown women in comedy, but you're Asian." Any other Asians in the house? Asians in the house. Build power, I'm gonna stay on that.
All right, so we have established that women are funny. I'd actually love to hear who some of your favorite female comics were. Who influenced you and why?
I'm, as I've just pointed out, I'm not funny, so I try to think about the things I was. If I'm not that, I know I'm incredibly serious and incredibly neurotic and very, very fractured and insecure and pretty much very cracked completely. And my friends, like my best friends are here, and you would all admit, correct, that I'm incredibly depressed. And so what I thought about when I was thinking about like who are my most favorite comic performers, women, they tend to be women, and I don't know if in real life they're very strong, but the performers tend to come out kind of similarly. And I was thinking about the Woody Allen women, you know, sort of Diane Keaton, Diane Wiest, Judy Davis, and Mia Farrow, et cetera. And I was thinking about Mike Leigh's films. You know, many of you know Mike Leigh's work. The women are just basically falling apart, and that is very attractive to me. And I love love, Tina Fey, et cetera, the ones that, I loved Gilda Radner. I thought that she was, genius. But then the weird thing is, after all my insecurity, I kind of went, oh, but the other side for me of loving particular women is that I love the very, very strong women too, the Jane Lynch's and the, even when Meryl Streep plays all those tough women, the, Maggie Smith, I mean, come on, and so in a way, I guess in the end, every woman that takes, great writing and takes the extremes of behavior to a place of rawness, I end up just loving, so that's a big, long-winded answer, I didn't even have to look at my notes.
First of all, there's people in the back, and there's like empty seats.
There's a couple up for
Come sit, there's 3 empty seats in the front row. Tracy Ullman, she was watching her show. I don't know if you guys remember, but that's where The Simpsons began. Those little interstitials. But she could just play anyone or anything. I thought she just was breathtaking to watch her. But growing up, watching Lily Tomlin, watching Carol Burnett, and watching Lucille Ball. But of course, for someone like me to see Margaret Cho get up there, because like in the Korean handbook, you can be a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or professor, right? That was it, right? When I first started acting, my mother was like, "Oh, you going to pretend for a living?" I remember when I was in high school, it was all about. You have to get straight A's. Like I had to be valedictorian because I had to go to Ivy League schools because then I get a good job and then be happy, right? That's like a linear path. Right? But I remember bringing a test home once and I was like, and she goes, oh my God, which means, oh my God, in Korean. Oh, you got the 99? Who got 100? She was mortified. Like most parents hope their kids don't end up in prison. I scandalized my family by, getting a 99. The test. So anyway, my mother was actually hysterically funny. In fact, the character that I do, I have this alter ego named Sung-hee Park who's fresh off the boat from Korea, never done stand-up before, comes out in a full-length traditional Korean gown called a hanbok, and is terrified and shaking and hiding behind the fan and will cry and go home and kill herself if it doesn't go well, and then proceeds to unwittingly tell the most offensive, racist, vulgar jokes, but she doesn't know what she's saying, so she's just like, yay! And people either love it or and get that it's satire. It's meant to be like Archie Bunker's character on All Family, and then other people get offended and get up and walk out and send me hate mail, like, you're trying to perpetuate racism, and I'm thinking, yeah, that would be my goal.
It's hilarious. I strongly recommend that you go onto YouTube and find Sung-hee
Park. But it actually comes from my mom and her inability to tell a joke, and all the women at Korean Christian church growing up that were just partially had no filter and partially couldn't tell a joke. So my mom, we would say, Mom, tell a joke, because my dad was brilliantly funny and could tell jokes, like he knows hundreds of jokes, like no problem. And my mother would go, okay, priest and rabbi walk up into bar, and no, I got 죽겠다. I go, no, just priest. And he say, I was talking to the duck. And it's like, what? She says the punchline, like all of a sudden in the middle, and we're like, Mom, tell us another joke.
All right, Tara, who influenced you?
When I was in high school, it was kind of the golden era of women on SNL. So Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph. Oh my God, Maya Rudolph. The way that she kind of owned Donatella Versace, and it was just like so outrageous, but so specific. She was a really big influence, and I have to say, kind of now, learning who Nora Ephron was, like I got to the game way too late, and now I sort of look at her as a mentor from the grave. Like I've read all of her books. When I think about, I don't know, this article's not going so well, I kind of think like, what would Nora do? And I've just been like combing through all of her work. Also, if anyone saw Nick at Night a long time ago, I guess in the late 80s, I watched a lot of I Love Lucy. So to me, it was kind of, in my consciousness, there were always women in comedy on TV, and I sort of didn't even realize that that might not be completely true.
And is there a difference between male comedy, female comedy? Is comedy cultural? Is it regional? Where do you sort of, what do you tap into and what do you see in terms of differences?
I think that one thing that most good comedy has in common is that it's fueled by an incredibly strong point of view, usually a little bit of anger. And my favorite comedy is when the intelligence just comes through like a laser beam. For example, Steve Martin was one of my stand-up comedy heroes. And I don't want to forget to mention, if I had never seen Margaret Cho do stand-up, I would never have thought to do stand-up ever. And Whoopi Goldberg as well. I don't know if you ever saw her HBO special where she, again, like Tracy Ullman, morphs into all these different characters. But Steve Martin would say and do things. He would go from the absurd and silly to quoting Kierkegaard and not caring if he wasn't going to dumb it down for the lowest common denominator of people in his audience. And so I just was thrilled by that. And I got to do a movie with him in Boston called House Sitter. I had a tiny part of a movie with him and Goldie Hawn. And I had all of every word of his stand-up comedy. This is when there were albums memorized, right? And just to get to be in a movie with him, and he's also so painfully shy. Some comedians, they're just nonstop, like they're on all the time. He was really shy unless the camera went on, and then he'd be on. One of my favorite things about him is because he was sort of gun-shy about fans and about talking to people. We were shooting a scene outside at Government Center Plaza in Boston, and some fans sort of snuck past the cops and all the security, and would like run up to him, want an autograph or something. And before they could say anything, he had these business cards pre-printed, right? He pulled out of his pocket, and they said on them, "This is to certify that you have had a personal moment with Steve Martin and found him to be warm and friendly."
So given Brown's open curriculum and the one semester that I spent as both a math and computer science major, I just want to, for everybody out here, I was wondering what each of you concentrated on, and then what sort of the trajectory was after Brown that led to your current careers.
I was a double concentrator in history and literary arts, which I kind of, after the fact, realized were super similar. They were all about storytelling and whose story gets told and how. And I was playwriting, and I thought, I'm going to move to New York, I'm going to be a playwright. And a very famous playwright who will remain unnamed told me, you can't make a career in playwriting, only David Mamet can make a career in playwriting. And I said, okay, and I was, this is not going so well. And so I went to the Public Theater. I was an intern for all of these kind of more avant-garde New York plays. And I was in a 14-hour tech rehearsal for a production of Wojciech done with North Korean refugees using only chairs and acrobatics. I was like, who is this play for? Like who is watching this? And if I'm going to be telling a story to the same room of New Yorkers for the next 20 years, I can't do that. So a friend of mine had an internship at The Daily Show, and he recommended, why don't you try out The Daily Show? And the first time I was ever in the studio, and you see it's like a really cold, dark room, and there are cameras whipping around Jon Stewart, and he's just delivering line after line of the so perfectly crafted, so funny, so well thought out, and so important. What he was doing really mattered, and it was being broadcast to millions of people. I thought this is my medium. TV is the bomb. I gotta be here.
The Daily Show, one of the best shows ever.
Ever. Yeah, absolutely.
What was the question?
Well, you got your master's from Brown.
I got my master's from Brown in
cognitive psych. Right. Okay. So what was your aha moment? I want to be.
Well, so I got my BA at and then I came here and got my master's in cognitive psych. I was in a PhD program here, and I left after my master's because I was stir crazy, and I moved to Boston. And I intended to come back and finish my PhD, but I moved to Boston, and I got my first and only 9-to-5 job at a healthcare consulting firm called JSI. And so I have a cubicle. I'm in an office, and I'm doing marketing research and statistical analysis for data for Planned Parenthood and AIDS research and good cause stuff. Anyway, I'm listening to the radio, and they're having a cattle call for extras on that show, Spencer for Hire, running like Boston cop drama. So I thought, well, that sounds fun. So I took a long lunch, and I went and stood in line, and they took my Polaroid, and I filled out some size card or something, and then about a month later, they called and they said, the casting director, Ann Baker, we'd like you to come and do extra work on Spencer Fryer tomorrow. So I called in sick for work. Anyway, so the next morning, it was really early call time, and I'm not an early morning person, so I set my alarm for, let's say, 6 a.m., and the power went out in my building. This is back when there was no cell phones. This is like 1988, right? So the alarm didn't go off, and I wake up to my home phone ringing. And it's like, hello? Suzanne, this is Ann Baker. Are you planning to show up on set this morning? And I'm like, and I thought quickly, I saw my clock radio, it's flashing 3 a.m. I say, Ann, oh my God, my clock radio is flashing 3 a.m. The car must have gone on my building. I'm so sorry. Can I please still come? And she says, you better get here so fast. And she hangs up on me. An inauspicious beginning. So luckily, the location was walking distance from where I lived. So I don't even know what I had on, and I went running down the street. And I get there, and if you know anything about the TV making business, nothing had happened yet. And wait, nothing's going on. I think I sent Ann Baker flowers that day, and anyway, I'm sitting there like a sponge going, I can't believe everything that is going into, there's hundreds of people and all this equipment just to shoot this TV show. And anyway, this older character actor, probably in his mid-60s, named Arnie Cox, came up to me. He said, hi, what's your name? And I said, my name's Suzanne. And he says, how come I haven't seen you around? Because in Boston at the time, there were about 50 actors total. And they all knew each other. It was like a family. So we knew that I wasn't part of the family. And I said, oh, no, I have a real job. I'm just doing this for fun today. I basically insulted him, but he didn't take it personally. And he said, no, here's what you need to do. And he was my guardian angel. He took me under his wing and said, you do these 10 things and you'll be acting all the time in this town. And I just followed the impulse, and I started, get your headshots done like this person and set up your resume like this, and here are the 4 casting directors in all, Boston, and start taking acting classes and that kind of thing. And within a month, I had quit my job. I was in Screen Actors Guild, and I was making a living as an actor. So it was just like this, you know how when you're on your divine path, everything just seems to go well. Do you know what I mean? It's like the universe started to conspire in my favor. No, not so much for you.
I'm always depressed.
This is what I understand. It's like Meg Ryan's character in When Harry Met Sally.
Yeah.
Is like the lovable neurotic, because she's
Right.
like, I'm going to be 40, and he's like, in 8 years, and she's like, I know, but it's coming. Lovely, endearing, neurotic person,
Anyway,
right?
so my trajectory I came from my mom's here, so forgive me, Mom, if I say, and my son, too, has actually never seen me perform, because working on 2.5 Men, it's not appropriate for children, of course, correct? It's always weird when parents come up to me and say, my kid watches it, they're 5. It just makes you go, what am I supposed to say to that? But I had a very proper upbringing. I definitely was not allowed to swear in the house. Certainly there were no drugs. I didn't drink. I did no sex. No boys even allowed no opposite sex, because my brother wasn't allowed girls in the house, and I was allowed boys in the house, unless the parents were all home. So it was a very, very proper upbringing. In my head, I remember, I think I was wearing pink all the time. Like, I really believe I was a very proper. I did very well in school as a ballet dancer. Definitely no humor in that profession, I have to say. And I injured myself, ended up at Brown. I think I only got in because I think they thought in the application, I wrote down Marin Hinkle, I think they thought it was a boy, and having a boy ballet dancer is very unusual. So that was the reason I got in. But anyway, so I got in, and I love my unit, my dorm. Honestly, I think like half of them are here. I'm so amazed and pleased. And I was, again, very nervous person and was hopefully doing well academically, probably on the road, like my parents, to the academic life of being, you know, either a teacher or a lawyer. My mom's a judge, so, you know, very proper, straight path. And in thinking of what you just said in an aha kind of moment, Roger, who's this lovely man who is here, ended up being my secret Santa, and he was probably aware very quickly, he's perceptive, he's a doctor, and he was perceptive that to make fun of me, it would be interesting if on the day that you had to actually give the gift that was opened in front of the rest of the gathering, if he gave me the height report on male sexuality. So I basically like unwrapped, this is a true story, correct? Is this correct? Amy, you remember? Okay, so I unwrapped the book and opened it. I don't even know what that is. I mean, sexuality, I didn't even know what that was either. I opened it up and everyone's like, read it. And again, there was a little part of me, because I kind of knew from dance that I liked to perform, but I basically, you know, and I also had a text in front of me, which was going to be good. I didn't like now have to make up things. I could read a text. So I opened it up to chapter 17 or something, and I go, chapter 17, I look around at this group of loving people. I love my unit. I said, chapter 17, Filladio. And then I go on like Kuningala. Anyway, point of story is it might have been like an aha moment of like, oh wow, I love making people laugh. I don't know how to do it. Give me text. Or this could work. So then cut to, I kind of decided maybe I'd do some theater. I wasn't cast that much. There were people in my class that were like from Dalton who had Daisy Prince's dad, Hal Prince. He's kind of powerful. He'd done 25,000 musicals. There were all these, Laura Linney, she's kind of famous. You know, like these are really extraordinarily successful actors who had already been successful. So I was hardly ever, I mean, I sort of was cast, but not enough for my liking. So I ended up, my parents had been in the Peace Corps. Sorry, this is long-winded, I'll try and make it clear. My parents had been in the Peace Corps in Africa, and there was an exchange program in Tanzania where I was born, and I think that's exactly what they
Wait a
wanted to
minute,
do.
you were born in
Yes.
Tanzania?
Yes, I know, it's funny, I guess. But I ended up thinking, to please my parents, which was a theme, I would go to Africa, or a group of my friends were, some of us, and some of them are here too, were thinking of doing this weird, crazy program at the O'Neill Theater Festival where you would basically try and run around like acting like you were peanut butter or Jello or something and become a performer. And so I brought my parents in their suits to the O'Neill, and they saw everybody running around going, you know, doing all this crazy things. And they were horrified, but I sort of convinced them that I could do a semester abroad at the O'Neill. And then that led me, so I didn't really ever imagine I would be an acting student, but that led me to a summer program at a place called Chautauqua. And what was great about that, and this is a little long-winded, but I'm going to say this, is that we had to do mask work. And there was this amazing professor there named Pierre Lefebvre, and he basically had us don these French masks. And as soon as I covered my face, I was allowed to be funny. Like, it was just this extraordinary freedom that somehow I had thought of myself in this proper kind of image, maybe this ballet dancer, maybe this like I'm going to be a nun person. And somehow the idea that my face could be formulated differently allowed me to act out things. And I think it was Tina Fey, I had a quote, but I'm not going to read it, that was talking about like, read her book, guys. That's like the best thing about women in comedy. That says everything, Bossy Pants. And she basically like properly has been asked, you know, what are women funny? The same kind of questions we've been asked. And she says, well, all women, she said, men like to just rebel and be outrageous, but women are, you know, proper and have gone to school and have good grades and all that. But the truth is that in the end, to get away from all that properness, that's where they find the release in comedy. And I think actually, then she made fun of me. She said something like, okay, have you left me for the cheese tray yet? At the end of her little comment. But for me, I think that it isn't really a joke. That I think that if I had continued on my path that was probably set out by the family, I would have led a life that was similar to that path. And I guess that for me, allowing people to see a side of me that was more cracked, which is the true side, was the place, the aha moment for me to say, I'm kind of home.
That's great. And given the fact that there have been advances and that we have made into the arena of comedy, we really are still very much in the minority, and you in a double minority. What are some of the specific challenges that you faced being a woman working in comedy, especially stand-up comedy? Let's start with you.
First of all, I'm never going to forget Palladio. I could work that into something. Well, you know, I sort of have a dichotomous answer to that because on the one hand, it is weird to be, like, I used to be on the road. I did a national tour and would go to different stand-up comedy clubs, which are not really fun places to be if you're a comic in the green room, because a lot of comics are really cynical and depressed and self-loathing and angry, and I'm angry, but I'm not any of those other things. I'm actually really, I'm grateful. You know, I'm a stage 4 cancer survivor, and I'm grateful to be alive. I'm a carpe diem kind of a girl, and I also, I was raised by incredible parents who every day of my childhood kissed me and hugged me and told me they loved me, and that I'm beautiful and smart and kind and funny and talented and wonderful, and that I can accomplish anything that I want in the world, and I believed them. So in a lot of ways, my life is just a manifestation of that core belief that they instilled in me. It's just, that's the legacy that they have left me, that anything is possible. So it doesn't matter that I'm, because here's the thing about when people like to talk about statistics, like statistically speaking, you know, and I'm thinking, those numbers don't resonate for me because those are just numbers about what other people have done in the past. And is that me? Sorry about that. Has nothing to do with who I am and what I create in the present and moving forward. Because if I believed in statistics, first of all, I wouldn't exist because stage 4 cancer is the worst. Stage 5 is you're dead. So I'm not even supposed to be alive, number one. And I reversed it. So, and also, you know, I'm a female, minority, comedian living in Hollywood with no boobs, so I shouldn't be working ever. And yet I am, so I don't obviously care about the statistics. So I don't walk into a room with any of those considerations about myself, so then no one else seems to have them either. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And also I'm 50, so, you know, and people are like, really? And I tell them, well, you know, they say black don't crack, but yellow don't mellow. Anyway.
50 is practically stage 5.
Exactly.
In the comedy world, in Hollywood.
But, you know, for me, 50 is the new 30.
Exactly.
I also have to tell you that I just got engaged at the age of 50 to a man who I've known for 20 years and been friends with for 20 years and secretly in love with for 20 years. And it turns out that he has been secretly in love with me for 20 years. And he's sitting in the second row. No, not cynical at all.
Now, Marin, 2.5 Men was an extremely male-driven comedic show. Tell us what it was like being on that set and working with those actors.
You might have read a couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a hubbub. We ended up losing our jobs because of set. It's funny, I always say to my son who's sitting here, I always say, you know, I've got something we need to talk about, and he says, oh, is it good or bad? And then I said, well, it's kind of both, and which one do you know, the classic, which one do you want to hear first? So in a way, in response to your question, it's kind of like I've got some good and some bad, which do you want to hear first? The good news, and I really do want to be, is extraordinarily grateful. You're just such an inspiration, Suzanne. It's like the amazing news is that I graduated from all that education with like thousands, of course, like you all probably, thousands and thousands of loans. And then my husband, after being in theater, decided to go to law school, and had hundreds of thousands of loans. So we had like $200,000 worth of loans, and the salary I was making at that time in New York and the off-Broadway lands were, you know, around $10,000 a year. I mean, really, I look at my old statements and go, it's amazing. And I had bagels and beans and rice, and that's all. And we lived with 6 people and cockroaches. So that was my life. So when I was offered to go to Los Angeles and work on this show once again, and then after that I finished, was doing theater again, and then was the trajectory brought me over to Two and a Half Men. It was, you know, I'm so grateful for the financial support and structure and stability that offered me. And there were plenty of times where I felt very kind of like that teacher saying, you know, be more brown. I felt like I had to like take my brown hat off and be like, this character I'm playing is so not brown. Do you know what I mean? She's so not what I wanted to be doing with a decade of my life. And yet, the guy who writes that, you may have heard of him, Chuck Lorre, is a genius at comedy. He has 4 shows next year that are going to be on the air, and they're probably going to all be in top 10 at some point. We can all go like, that's a miracle. And those 2 men that are the 2 leads in the show, John and Charlie, are also kind of genius. Well, Charlie's not there anymore, I don't know if you heard. But those 2 guys were comic geniuses. I mean, we did a table read the first time we all got together, and I, who actually didn't grow up with much pop culture, I'm illiterate, I told you I was going to be a nun. I'm sort of joking, but I really didn't know who Charlie and John were. I'd never seen John prior in any movies, and Charlie Sheen I'd heard a bit about. But I watched them, and they just knew how to play the whole, you know, kind of, you could call it Laurel and Hardy, you could call it, I mean, whatever. They just really knew how to do their stuff. So I feel like I got to have 10 years of, or 9 or 8, whatever it was, because I was kind of not needed there anymore. But I watched comedy be done in ways that are just rarely, you know, done so successfully. Okay, now that's the good, right? The harder part is, I think back as I was kind of going through this at 5 a.m. being nervous this morning, my first moment of walking on that set, my son was 9 days old. I'd had 5 days in the hospital, so I'd only been home for 4 days. I'd had a cesarean, I had staples. This is not going to sound funny, and it isn't funny. And I walked onto a set with like huge executives, CBS head, Les Moonves, and Peter Rothby's names might not be familiar, but like huge, powerful men. And then all these guys, there's 10 writers, and they're like 9 of them are men, 1 of them's a woman. And I walked onto this set, and I, in my crazy insecure that you guys know, no way, I was asked to go around the room and say my name, which, by the way, my name is Marin. It's a hard name to pronounce, and even after year 8, I swear to God, they still didn't know how to pronounce my name. And I'm not digging, it's just, it was, one guy said to me once, have you thought of changing it? I was like, wow, no, I haven't thought of that. But anyway, but I'm not being negative. I'm just saying that's sort of a truth. But I walked on, and this is sort of, you were talking about breasts, and this sort of is about breasts. I walked on, and I said, hi, my name's Marin Hinkle, and I have a son, 9 days old. He's actually in the trailer out there with a babysitter. I'm so amazed. I'm so moved. I'm so thankful. And I was really nervous, and I said, and by the way, you guys, if my breasts get, like, I just want to apologize. They may be a little full, and there might be a little leakage, and I'm sorry. And there was crickets. Now, that show has a lot to do with breasts. I don't know if you ever watched it, but there's a lot of comedy to do with that kind of stuff. Women and bodies, they did not find that funny. Breasts are not to be talked about in terms of, you know, like leakage, or in terms of like breastfeeding. So anyway, that was a moment in my insecurity that I realized, oh, I'm not in Kansas anymore. And I'm in a different world than the familiar and comforting Brown or in the educational world. And I in those years I was there, I had to, they started me as an insecure character, which is similar to me. And then quickly I got a phone call saying I was too similar to, energy-wise, to John's character, so they were going to have to put me outside a door. They have between the 10 or 9 writers probably like 25 ex-wives, and so I'm a compilation. Yeah, they thought that was funny, right? I'm a compilation of those 25 ex-wives, and those people are getting paid a lot of alimony. So the role is kind of filled with some negativity, right? And if you've ever seen it, I stand outside a door, knock on the door, I used to, and knock on the door and basically say, give me my money. Honestly, I think I once had to say, give me my money for a boob job. I mean, that's like, it came right back to the whole thing about breasts. But anyway, that's not to say that the humor isn't also sometimes very sophisticated, and it can be amazing. But back to your question about being a woman there, I had to don like a different kind of hat than what I had learned at Brown. And I had to appreciate, you know, I was on an airplane once. I've never seen this show. I don't think I've ever turned it on at home. but I've seen it on airplanes, and I would watch the people that, or once when my dad was in the hospital, I watched people in the hospital, or I watched people in airplanes watching that show, and I swear I had this incredible sense, again, of gratitude, going, this makes people laugh. It isn't necessarily my humor or my mom's or maybe yours, right? But I was going to say something. I once said, I don't know anybody who watches the show, and I also say, I also don't know anyone that voted for Bush. And I just stopped there. That's not really fair. The truth is, the show is really good, and I'm grateful that I was there. It was definitely an interesting challenge at times in terms of sort of political philosophy and my ideas, but it was a great experience.
Before we move off of this topic, I just want to tell you guys that I did one episode of 2.5 Men. I had a really small part, and I didn't get to work with Marin. But one thing that struck me that we discussed this on the phone a couple weeks ago is what surprised me was how much I liked Charlie and how kind and gracious he was as an actor, because I worked with him in the scenes, and I wanted to know if Marin had the same experience. And if I didn't know had heard anything about what his private life was like outside of the set, I would think, what a kind and generous and wonderful actor.
For the record, not that this should go on any record, although I do notice there's a camera, so I guess but for the record then, camera is it is... Hi, Charlie. I was going to say, Charlie's watching. This is on YouTube, I'm so screwed. The stuff that came out in the press, never once in 9 years did I see any of it. You just don't, it's like you read about, I do read those magazines, and that just didn't have anything to do with what was experienced on set, ever, ever, ever. And I know that, people have addictive lives and that can be kept outside, but I never saw any of that. And so I'm glad he has a new show and all that.
Well, here's a question, because you touched on it a little bit earlier about how women sort of grow up raising their hands and wanting to do well and to please. And I think it was Sheryl Sandberg in her book said that risk-taking is not innate in most women, and yet risk-taking in comedy has proven very, very successful for male counterparts. And do you feel like at some point in time in your work in comedy, you have had to sort of step out there, take a big risk? Tara, why don't you speak a little bit, because your experiences have been different, and there are so many new forms of comedy that are being produced now that are much more entrepreneurial than going out and waiting for someone to give you a job. I'd love to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I absolutely think that risk and risk-taking is probably the most important thing you can do as a comedian, and as a female comedian in particular. I think, the whole Tina Fey's Bossy Pants, which is just amazing, when she talks about how she was, polite and followed the rules and wanted to be a hard worker. And that has been my whole life. It was, I'm going to go to middle school, to high school, to college. I'm going to get all A's. Like, that's all I wanted. And so when I graduated from college, it was sort of like, well, now what am I going to do? If I can kind of see this theater entertainment world, but there's a scary word called freelance. And that means you don't have a regular job. Your show could be canceled at any time, and then you'd have nothing. There's no health insurance. Like, those kinds of basic building blocks of what we're told, like, this is what life should look like. This is why your parents paid so much money for you to go to Brown. So I was always sort of like really, really nervous to take a risk, and only recently have sort of seen you have to lean into your voice. And as Suzanne was saying, voice is that's like the root of comedy, is what's your point of view, and really leaning into that point of view. And now there are so many ways that if you're, up and coming, or you've been around, there's a new technology every quarter that comedians can exploit. Like right now it's Vine, these 6-second loops of video, and all of a sudden there are stars of Vine, there are stars of Instagram, stars of YouTube, so many different platforms that you can be funny on. So I really encourage myself to go find these websites like Hello Giggles for Women is amazing, and it's run by a really talented group of women producers, comedians, directors, who just give you a platform. you know, a place to say what you want to say.
And aren't there executives now that's their job at TV studios and movie studios to look through YouTube
Absolutely.
and let's find the next.
Yeah, and I can say as someone who works at Comedy Central now, you know, we actively are looking to see, you know, the show Workaholics. It's about a group of dudes.
I felt that.
And it's
But we found it online.
Yeah.
They had been putting up short videos for 2 or 3 years, and they wrote, directed, produced, starred in, and it was like the complete package, all for much less money than you would need to make an episode of 2.5 Men or something else. And that's where, especially cable networks, are looking all the time to those places. We are going to move on to questions and answers from the audience, but I feel like I would be doing a disservice without getting into the question, given that we are all women, about work-life balance and having a career in comedy, entertainment, performing, and how you've been able to balance that with your life, whether it's children, marriage, illness, and whether or not, I'm really curious to hear whether at this point in your career, whether or not that's something you even think about. So Lauren, why don't we start with you and we'll go quickly down the line and then we'll open it up to questions.
I recently hosted an event for NYU graduate actors, since that's where I'd gone, and they were all in LA, and we were hanging out, and I said, you know, I think there's one class that was really sorely missed in grad school, and the teacher that runs the program sort of went, oh my God, what? Tell us. And I said, the class on sort of on parenting. And obviously that's something that would be helpful in med school and law school and any kind of graduate program. I definitely have had an amazing challenge, and you know, my most inspirational part of my life is being a parent, and so the juggling of it, I've been incredibly fortunate that the workplace, after I'd sort of not that they didn't know how to handle what I said about the breastfeeding, the amazing thing at my workplace was that they really, really accommodated me. Let me have my son there for 2 years on set as I basically walked around and handed him off to other people. And I don't know too many workplaces that allow for such a thing. So that was just extraordinary. So that's kind of one of the ways I learned how to juggle, is to take him with me every time. I do plays all the time, and every time I travel, I have the phone call from my agents to the theater saying she's bringing her child, and how can we help accommodate that? And they've been incredibly, you know, able to bend to that. So that's one of my lucky parts of my life.
I would say that being good at time management and multitasking helps. It helps to have a partner who either currently is in the industry or has been in the past, so he understands if the plans that you have suddenly change because you have an audition or a shoot or booking or travel. But I also think that when it comes to my illness, I mean, for 6 years I dealt with breast cancer 3 times, because like most Asians, I'm an overachiever, so. And the way, you know how I managed it, it takes a village, because, so I did some Western, some Eastern, some alternative, some illegal treatments, some revolutionary treatments. I traveled the world. I went $500,000 into debt. I changed the way that I eat and drink and think. So read Skinny Bitch and watch Food Inc. and be more conscious about what you eat and drink. And I started meditating and you know, the whole mind, body, spirit connection. But the thing that really saved my life was I had spent my entire adult life saving and fixing and rescuing and being everyone else's mentor and superhero. And so all of my arrows were pointing out. I was just giving until I collapsed. And it was a black belt lesson in staying still and receiving, asking for help and asking for love and support and receiving it. It was unbearable for me at first. I know that might sound bizarre because I believe that I deserve it, but I was just not accustomed to it. So I felt like, I ended up feeling like, because I finally, for the first 5 years, I kept it a secret. I didn't come out of the cancer closet until I had had it for 5 years. Because I was doing that perfectionist thing. Like in Asian culture, you're supposed to like everything's fine, everything perfect, don't worry. And it's like, I was still sick. And as soon as I came out of the cancer closet, my friends and family, I mean, people, it was like a tsunami of love, and people didn't come resenting me. They showed up ecstatic to reciprocate. They said, you've been gypping us out of half of a friendship this whole time. When we're not doing well, you rush in and love us back to life, and when you're not doing well, none of us know. And so I started to feel like Jimmy Stewart, you know, at the end of It's a Wonderful Life, like people just came in, and I found out like what I made of, but I found out that every single person I thought was my friend was, and who gets to find that out? And so ultimately, it made me a better person, and I ended up seeing it as this incredible gift because I'm now happier and healthier than I was before I got cancer.
Became aware that there will be a work-life balance. You know, I think very seriously that I'm sort of in this perpetual hustle right now. It's like, what blog can I get on? What video can I be making? I gotta have an informational meeting with so-and-so. Vine's a new thing, and now I need to master that too. So I feel like I'm sort of in a place where work and quote unquote getting ahead is the absolute most important thing to me. But then at the same time, I have amazing best friends, 3 of whom are here and were my college roommates, who really like hold me up. You know, I think having a circle of friends, like a kinship of your best friends really has, you know, that's my like life part. And they really, one of my friends, Jess Carey, edits every single piece of work I've ever done, every play I did in college, every article I write for Hello Giggles, you know, she's there to edit and question and tease out what I'm doing. So I think the work-life balance is my friends help me with my work and they inspire me to do my work.
That's fantastic. All right, well, let's open it up to questions, if anyone has a question. No? Yes. Speak loudly, so there's a microphone there and there, and if you feel, if you're a quiet talker.
I was going to say, many people here in the audience probably have humorous moments in their lives. I'm the only female in the household. I have 3 sons and my husband, so oftentimes there are very, very funny things that go on that I wish I could kind of capture through a lens. And I was wondering, what are your ways and mechanisms to kind of capture humorous moments? First question. Second question, are there any types of forums where women can get together and talk about humorous events and share their experiences?
Yeah, I think, you know, to the first question, how do you capture it? If you have an iPhone or a smartphone, you've got a video recorder. I mean, I use that for some of Comedy Central's like Facebook updates, like literally little videos that I've made with my own iPhone. You have the tools. And then to the second question, I write for Hello Giggles, which is a completely female-driven blog. And there are so many of them. There's Laughing My Vagina Off is another really I always feel nervous saying that, but I write with them sometimes. There are a lot of great ones like that.
I'm actually being told we only had time for one question.
Oh no.
So sorry, I monopolized the time. We really can't have to stop now. Okay. Well, thank you